Number 10. Foxtrot-class submarine. The Foxtrot-class submarine, currently abandoned inside of a dry dock in Kronstadt, Russia, is one of the coolest abandoned objects seen in the world today, and one of the most mysterious. The Foxtrot submarine was a diesel-electric patrol sub crafted by the Soviet Union, designed to replace the more primitive Zulu-class of submarines. The first Foxtrot entered the Navy back in 1958, and by 1983, at least 58 of these vehicles had been built for the Soviet Navy. It had an underwater endurance of about 10 days, it was extremely crowded on board, and by the time the last submarine was launched, it was completely outdated and obsolete. Still, the Russians used these submarines all the way until 2000, when the final Foxtrot was scrapped and disposed of. Now, this abandoned submarine is believed to have come from the Libyan Navy. Not all the submarines were only used by Russia. They made some for the Ukrainian Navy, the Indian Navy, the Libyan Navy, and even the Cuban Revolutionary Navy. It's highly likely that the destroyed body of the submarine currently abandoned in Kronstadt was taken to be scrapped, then completely forgotten about and abandoned. Number 9. Castle Village. There's an abandoned castle village in Turkey called Burj Al Baba, and it's beyond creepy. At first glance, it doesn't even look like a village. It looks like a set piece for some kind of weird Disney movie. In fact, looking at the pictures of the abandoned castle village, you would think you were looking at tiny replica objects, but these are, in fact, houses. They were constructed for luxury buyers in the foreign community. But like many of the abandoned objects sitting around the world today, this place never saw any action. The completely ridiculous homes were never lived in. It's currently sitting empty in the northwestern region of Turkey, and according to Business Insider, the developers of the project have already filed for bankruptcy and backed out of all their purchases. The result is that we have a weird, almost dystopian Disney village that looks like a bunch of hollowed-out Lego houses. The roads aren't built, there's no electricity, and it doesn't look like anyone's going to move in anytime soon. What's even weirder about this abandoned village is that the developers wanted to heat the homes using a natural hot spring in the area. The chief executive officer even told the New York Times that people would be able to drink the water, that the water would be able to heal kidney stones, and that by bathing in the natural spring water that would be flowing through the taps, a person could heal their skin problems, even curing rheumatism and slipped discs. Number 8. The rides at Joyland. There's nothing more fascinating than an abandoned amusement park, which is why the Joyland amusement park in Wichita, Kansas is next on the list. This bizarre attraction was in operation for 55 years, open from between 1949 and 2006. Now, the once prosperous amusement park is home to a horde of strange abandoned objects that would make for a very creepy backdrop to a Stephen King movie. The park was originally founded by a man named Lester Ottaway and his trio of sons. During the park's peak, there were over 24 attractions, including a wooden roller coaster ride. But the story of the abandoned objects in this park gets a little tragic. Lester Ottaway passed away in the middle of the 1950s, and his sons then sold the family park. The new buyers spent 30 years trying to make the park succeed, adding all kinds of new and crazy rides. And then, a little girl was injured in April of 2004 after falling 30 feet, or about 9 meters, off the Ferris wheel. This spelled doom for the park, which ultimately closed in the summer of 2004. Now, the giant slide is covered in leaves and branches, the original Joyland wooden roller coaster is sitting with its paint peeling off, and the rest of the park is in a horrible state of disrepair. But if you're interested in cool abandoned rides, this is definitely the place to check out on your next urban exploring adventure. Have you ever gone to an abandoned amusement park? What did you see there? Was it scary? Tell me about your experiences in the comments section below. Then remember to subscribe to Talltanic if you haven't already for more amazing videos just like this one. Number 7. 1962 Ford Thunderbird. A 1962 Ford Thunderbird had recently been found on sale online after being completely abandoned. The sellers of the car have described it as a barn find, spending at least 2 decades sitting completely unused in storage. And yet, despite being left to rot in a worthless old storage unit, the car was discovered in near-perfect condition. Even after an estimated 22 years in total isolation with nobody caring for it, the car still runs and drives amazingly, proving once and for all that the American automotive industry back in the 1960s was the absolute best. Plus, one thing that's really great about an old car sitting abandoned for so long is that it comes with some very cool goodies. For example, when the Thunderbird was finally removed from storage, it was discovered with the owner's manual, the workshop manual, and even the convertible top manual. These may not sound as exciting as something like first edition Pokemon cards to some of our younger viewers, but to car enthusiasts, this is a pretty incredible abandoned discovery. Even more incredible is that the car only has about 73,000 miles or 120,000 kilometers on it, meaning that after sitting for 22 years, it has less mileage than most trade-ins you find at the dealership. Number 6, the Bridge to Nowhere. There is a bridge to nowhere located in the San Gabriel Mountains near Los Angeles. The strange and abandoned bridge was apparently constructed in 1936 over a small gap of the East Fork of the San Gabriel River. The bridge was originally supposed to link between the roadway and the valley to the south, but it ended up being nothing. In the spring of 1938, there was a huge flood that shifted the landscape of the canyon and literally destroyed the road that had been leading to the bridge. The result was that the road never got rebuilt and the entire construction project was abandoned. But the bridge was already finished, so it was just kind of left in the middle of nowhere to serve no purpose. Now the bridge is working as a tourist attraction. It's an abandoned structure that you can see on an afternoon walk just outside of Los Angeles. In fact, the Bridge to Nowhere is a very popular hiking area. People actually come here to picnic and swim in the river underneath the bridge. The scenery is fantastic, you get the best sunrises and sunsets, and the abandoned bridge looks elegant, smack dab in the middle of an otherwise barren wasteland. You can even bungee jump from the side of the bridge if you're feeling brave. Number 5, Skeleton Temple. The abandoned skeleton of a strange temple in Taiwan is quite a bit different from the picturesque abandoned bridge above the San Gabriel River. This temple is a hollow and oddly creepy shell. The temple appears to be unfinished, and it's located in Taoyuan, just a short train ride from the capital of Taipei. In fact, the building is completely covered in wild foliage and overgrown trees. The abandoned temple is next to a small farm, as well as a few other vacant lots that appear to be abandoned. The temple is also filled with very strange things, such as trash, a horde of bottles, and thousands of small white pellets from an airsoft gun. Someone must have been doing some target practice inside of the abandoned structure. But here's where things get really incredible. In one of the very back unfinished rooms of the temple, there is an abandoned blue sofa chair sitting in the corner and an altar with a stool in front of it. As if someone were visiting the temple on a regular basis, even though it was deserted. If you find yourself in Taiwan and are thinking about exploring some abandoned places and checking out all of the weird abandoned objects in the Skeleton Temple, you better hope that you don't run into whoever's using this place as their own private shrine. Number 4, Hospital Relics. An urban explorer has just come across one of the strangest places that has ever been found throughout all his adventures. It all happened when a photographer broke into a rural abandoned hospital near Atlanta, Georgia, and documented the entire thing. The hospital was apparently abandoned in 2010, but nobody cleared away any of the objects from inside. The result was that everything being used in the hospital before 2010 was still in there for the photographer to capture in spooky clarity. Not only was the hospital creepy for the fact that it was an abandoned hospital, but all the abandoned medical equipment made it even freakier, such as the abandoned hospital beds, the still and quiet emergency room, the silent radiology department with empty waiting chairs, and the fully functioning MRI machine. The place was an urban explorer's dream location, especially since everything inside the hospital was left pretty much brand new. According to what the Urban Explorer said, the hospital had been one of the biggest employers in the rural area, but it lacked profitability because there weren't enough clientele coming in. Basically, there weren't enough people getting sick to keep the hospital running. So, the hospital ran out of local funding and the county officials didn't have a choice. They had to close the facility, leaving everything inside with hopes that it would one day open yet again. So far, everything inside the creepy abandoned hospital is in the exact same place as when it closed, just waiting to be used again. Number 3. Into the Wild. There is an abandoned relic like no other sitting in the Alaskan wilderness. Or at least, there was. The bus is known popularly as the Into the Wild bus, or sometimes as Bus 142, or the Magic Bus. It has been sitting in the Alaskan wilderness, completely abandoned for years, and it became famous as the place where a certain young man documented his own last days over a period of 114 days back in 1992. Because of the cult sensation over the movie and book Into the Wild, this abandoned bus has been a sort of lure for people to venture into the wilderness and find it. After all, this was the place where Christopher McCandless hiked to, stayed in, and then died from starvation. Christopher had kept a journal of his entire experience, and after he was discovered dead, John Krakauer wrote a book in 1996 based on the young man's journal. And while a lot of people have seen the movie, not many people know that this is a real bus and a real location and a real thing that happened. At least, it was until just recently. According to the Tampa Bay Times, the Alaska National Guard flew the bus out of the forest in 2020 after too many people died trying to reach the famous abandoned landmark. According to the Department of Natural Resources Commissioner, people are encouraged to enjoy Alaska's wild areas safely, and the bus was simply too dangerous and cost too many visitors their lives. If you ask me, this is an actual travesty. Number 2. The Myrtles Plantation Mirror. The Myrtles Plantation in Louisiana is one of the strangest and most haunted places in all of the United States. Legend says that the plantation is home to at least a dozen ghosts. It's also been reported that at least 10 murders have occurred in the house throughout its history. There are a lot of different stories surrounding this horrific plantation, with tales of torture, sadness, and of course, despair. But one of the strangest stories involves an abandoned object that can apparently still be found inside the house, and that apparently holds the spirit of a girl named Sarah Woodruff and her 2 young children. So far as the legend goes, the mirror somehow managed to trap the spirit of Sarah and her kids after they were poisoned by an unknown murderer. Even all these years after the plantation was abandoned, people still claim that they have seen handprints and visages inside the mirror. While we obviously have no scientific evidence that this is real, when you see a handprint appear in an abandoned mirror and you feel your blood run cold, you don't really need science. Of course, one of the reasons why this plantation and the objects within it are so haunted is because the house reputedly was built over an Indian burial ground, but again, this is just hearsay. Number 1. The Chained Oak. The chained oak is one of the more incredible abandoned objects that nobody really knows what to make of. It's located in the middle of nowhere in the United Kingdom, and it's really nothing more than an old tree wrapped up in chains. But does it ever look strange? The tree was apparently wrapped up in chains back in 1821 because of a curse that came about when the Earl of Shrewsbury refused to give a desperate woman the money she asked for. She placed a curse on the tree, saying that every branch that fell from the tree would cause a member of the Earl's family to die. Shortly after this happened, one of the Earl's relatives apparently died under very mysterious circumstances. And so, the Earl chained up all the branches of the oak tree so that none of them could fall down. Of course, it's extremely difficult to say whether this legend is true or not, but it is a plain fact that the oak has been fastened with chains for dozens of years. Nobody has the gall to go in and take the chains down, and for the foreseeable future, the tree and its chains will remain abandoned in the forest. What's the coolest abandoned object you've ever found? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and come back soon.